Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Deserved to win a meter, be damned. The Calgary Flames take home a shutout, shutting out the Utah Mammoth 2-0. Dustin Wolf on point as he kept the Flames in this one throughout the multiple times throughout the game. But they don't ask how sometimes, they just ask how many, and the Flames put this one up in the win column. Hi, my name's Conrad Krausert, and boy, oh boy, it has been an interesting ride for your Calgary Flames as of late. Obviously, as we said, they had a better November and the start to December to forget, but the Calgary Flames have won 2 in a row once again, stringing together a pair of wins in Blasty. And with that, the Calgary Flames do leap over the Vancouver Canucks for last place in the Pacific Division. Of course, Vancouver is sending out the "We are open for business" email allegedly this week. But we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. Hopefully you tuned in on time to the Calgary Flames, as I know a lot of us probably going to go watch the late games of the Hockey Night in Canada schedule. But hopefully we get some friends in here after our recap. It is going to be a fairly short recap, as only 2 goals on the score sheet, and hopefully you tuned in on time as Igor Sharangovich gets his 4th of the year. A snapshot after some great pressure there from Yan Kuznetsov right at the red line. Sharangovich forks it down in deep. Kadri bounces off the pads of the Mammoth goaltender tonight, Vanacek. And Igor Sharangovich, give him credit, Johnny on the spot, pots that one home. Only 16 seconds into this one. I think they should have just ticked 1 extra second off, because 17 scoring with 17 seconds into the game looks a little bit better. But Sharangovich, not going to argue with that. As we've said, he's been a very hot and cold player and starting to get a couple points on the board in a row. Obviously, we also saw him leave the game a little bit later, but gets them on the board. That kind of really was the only real event to speak of, other than Dustin Wolf having to make a trio of 10-bell saves in the later half of the first. And as we said, Dustin Wolf probably the star of the game today. I don't know if they've thrown up stars. They have on the NHL website. Dustin Wolf gets the first star, and deservedly so. As I said, Utah wins the shot battle 11-8. Wolf makes a couple 10-bellers, and I don't think you can argue with how he played today. Second period, things got a little bit feisty with Liam O'Brien and Ryan Lomberg. The Lamborghini, hey, I haven't gotten to do this season, so I guess you gotta bring in the Lamborghini. Hey, he fits over here with Gavin McKenna. Maybe we'll keep him around a little bit longer. But yeah, Lomberg got the left on Liam O'Brien early. I think you're going to probably call that, if you're going on to hockeyfights.com, probably a 50-50 tie in that tilt. But yeah, good tilt by Lomberg. Stood up for Mackenzie Weegar after he took a solid piece of contact. And then Nazem Kadri, I think, got the weakest holding call I think I've ever seen. We all know, if you're a hockey fan, that referees don't call things in stretches very often. I think they know they had given Nick Schmaltz a high sticking call early, which not really on the same level of debatable. I think as soon as that stick gets anywhere in the face, it's automatic. And that Nazem Kadri hold was soft as 2-ply. Or 4-ply maybe even. But Kadri gets the call, but penalty kill kills it off. We go through the second period, no score. Utah once again outshoots the Flames 9-6 in that period. And then the Flames, I don't love using this saying because it's a soccer saying, but they park the bus in the third period, not really allowing a ton of high danger chances, including when it was the Flames that did eventually take a penalty later on in the period. Penalty. Huberdeau takes a hold with 2 seconds left. Irrelevant. And Connor Zary gets the empty net goal. Pulled, I was about to say Vemelka. Vanacek. No, it wasn't Vemelka today. It was Vanacek. Pulled Vanacek early. And good to see Connor Zary get the unassisted marker. Like, this is a guy who we've said has been probably the unluckiest guy outside of Matt Coronado this year. And I don't know how they're not giving Rasmus Andersson an assist on this play. I'm sure that'll come on review. But just a good job by Rasmus Andersson to dog that puck out of the zone, find Zary at the center ice, and Zary's wrist shot from center ice is not going to be stopped by no goaltender. So yeah, good showing for the Flames. Flames win the shot battle in the third period, 9-8. Do enough to maintain that 1-goal advantage all the way through. Like, this is not an effort we've seen from this Calgary Flames team very often. And, you know, it's just good to see that this squad doesn't need to score a million goals and can actually close out some games. Of course, a lot of that, as I said, goes to the credit of the goaltender, Dustin Wolf. Like, he had to stand on his head in the first, but I think his workload did get a little bit lighter as the game went on. But still, takes a team to get a shutout in the NHL, and the Calgary Flames, as a squad, did manage to take this one down for Dustin Wolf. I do believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that's Dustin Wolf's second shutout of the year. I'll double check that. I don't have a statistician like certain other shows do. That's what I got you guys for. Note, that is officially his first shutout of the year. It feels wrong to me, but maybe that hasn't been updated yet. I think it is his second. I just can't remember this year. But good for this Flame squad. As I said, screw the deserve to win a meter, saying that the Mammoth probably deserved to win this one more than half the time. When you get that early goal, like, you kill the momentum, especially for a team that's playing in the second half of the back-to-back. Finally, the Flames get the advantage on one of those. For you to go out and just shovel that one home, it's truly something that these Flames about a month ago wouldn't have done. Like, they probably would have missed that backhander, or they're calling it a snapshot for Sharky. And hey, there's a lot of times in this game that I probably wouldn't have thought that, or a lot of times this season where I wouldn't have trusted Connor Zary to be shooting from center ice even on an empty net, but buried that one. This Flames team starting to play with a little piss and vinegar, for lack of a better term. And yeah, as I said, it's a back-to-back game for Utah, but you only play the games that are on the schedule, and the Flames managed to pull out a complete effort in this one. So we'll go into period number 2 after that recap. But as we do, please, if you're watching this live, go on down, hit that like button. It does help us so much in a world that's increasingly being driven by algorithms. It certainly helps us out. Head on over to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, Blue Sky, whatever you're using. Say that you're out here enjoying Game Over Calgary. It helps us so much. Spreading by word of mouth as we continue to grow this brand. Trying to build it without, we had a couple studies come out about the negative impacts of gambling on news and sports media. So we are trying to avoid talking about that, as unlike a couple other shows that talk about it every single day. We try to not put that on your news feed. We try and continue the positivity without necessarily involving that dark side of what has become more and more populist media. But let's go into period number 2 and talk about the return to form for Dustin Wolf. As I know a lot of people were saying, oh, it's a sophomore slump. The Calgary Flames are going to be real tough because Dustin Wolf is not the goaltender that he was last year. I have a lot of problems with that. I think Dustin Wolf's underlying numbers were quite good for a lot of the season. And it's just finally that the team in front of him starting to score goals, number one. And number two, it's a confidence thing. Like, I think Wolfie's finally starting to see that the guys in front of him are playing hockey and are playing with passion. So he's starting to give out gems of an appearance, like 27 stops today in 60 minutes. We also have to make mention the Flames penalty kill, go 1 for 1. And in the faceoff dot, the Calgary Flames went 65%, which is massive. It's a talking point we've been on multiple times throughout the year that the Flames need to do better, and they were pretty incredible on the faceoff dot. I think they were talking about Morgan Frost, 89% on the night in the faceoff dot. Captain was 53%. Even John Beecher, 67%. Matt Coronado only took 1 draw, but he was 100% from the dot. And Nazem Kadri, over 60%. So I think I'm pretty happy with how the Flames played this game. They weren't the overly physical team that we've seen throughout this year. Actually trailed in hits, but I think Adam Klapka was running around. And I think a lot of that all plays into allowing Dustin Wolf to kind of be allowed to play his own game and allowed to continue to push this team to be what they will be this season. Which is maybe not where they need to be. Maybe you wish Dustin Wolf was playing like he did in the first month of the season for the rest of it, but for your franchise goaltender to kind of be working their way back into this one, I was very happy with the performance of the young netminder. Does this mean that we aren't going to see, or we are going to go back to long stretches where we only see Devin Cooley or only see Dustin Wolf and don't see Devin Cooley? I hope not. I hope that they can continue this kind of ride the hot hand for a while. But we have to remember, Devin Cooley still has very, very good stats this year. But we all knew what the situation was. We all knew Dustin Wolf was going to be the undoubted number one with a bullet for this squad. And he's starting to play like it again, regardless of how much certain commentators may want us to be doing it elsewise. And I don't know how much of this was the bright lights of a game where the Flames kind of needed to be the team that actually had the scheduled win on their side for once. But I think they knew that they had a team in Utah coming in off on that back-to-back with travel. And it finally pays off. And I think that allowing Dustin Wolf to be the goaltender for a night like that, where you are expecting your opponents to not necessarily be their best, for a goaltender that you're trying to, I'm not going to say rebuild confidence, because everything you hear from guys who are a lot closer to Dustin Wolf than I am says he's never had a confidence issue. But the numbers weren't there necessarily to back up what everyone was saying. It really was this return to form for Dustin Wolf that I think everyone knew was coming. You just didn't know when. And the fact that it's coming this year and maybe not next year is either concerning or good, depending on what side of the anti-tank you're on. Yeah, great to see this return to form for Dustin Wolf. As I said, making 27 and I want to see what the high danger chances were. Let's see if I can find that. Let me see. Not on this site. I'll check somewhere else because I really do want to know how many high danger chances they're going to credit this Mammoth squad with. According to Natural Stat Trick, the Mammoth had 15 high danger chances compared to the Flames 11 too. So that's even more praise that should be heaped on the Calgary Flames franchise goaltender. Because as I said, he's back on form in these last two games. Playing 120 minutes and only allowing one goal. And that one was a fluke, to say the least. Really shines well on the Calgary Flames' number one goaltender. Into period number 3, and I think we'll keep this one short because I didn't really keep any notes. But Rasmus Andersson, like, this is a completely different player than we saw at the beginning of the year, and that does kind of scare me that the Flames are going to go the method of re-signing Rasmus Andersson rather than trying to recoup an asset out of there. But depending on what Rasmus Andersson wants, obviously, really will sway that conversation. And was a +1 today, and as I said, I think he should have an assist on the stat sheet. I think when I wake up tomorrow, he will have that assist listed. But it was a pretty interesting way for the Calgary Flames to go today. Give out the kind of flowers to some of these guys that stand out. I thought Yegor Sharangovich, up until he got hurt, looked really good in both offensive and defensive aspects to his game. You're going to have to wonder how much that knock does matter, as he did return to the game after missing a short little stint in the locker room. Ends up only playing 14:09 today. Blake Coleman, even though he was a +1, I felt he was kind of invisible. As invisible as Blake Coleman ever is for this Calgary Flames roster. Then a guy I thought was really, really good today but didn't show up on the stat sheet really was Adam Klapka. I thought he was being a menace and throwing his body around. As I've said numerous times, for a guy that is 6'8", sometimes he plays like he's 5'8". Definitely was not the case today or recently at all for Adam Klapka. Tokay number 1, thanks for showing up. Hopefully you didn't show up this late for the Flames game because you might have missed the most goals, missed most of the goals in this one. But taking a look here over on the other side, you have to remember that this was a Mammoth squad missing some guys. And honestly, I just wonder why they traded Doan. Like, Josh Doan seems like he is exactly the kind of player that this Mammoth squad would want. I understand I think it took him to get JJ Peterka out of Buffalo. Because I don't know. I think there's a lot of upside for a guy like Josh Doan, and I understand there's also a lot of upside to JJ Peterka, but boy, it kind of feels like offloading a guy that's 23 and scoring 19 points in Buffalo seems like a guy that could have certainly helped this young Mammoth squad. Of course, JJ Peterka also, I think it was kind of a change of scenery for JJ as much as it was for Josh Doan, but like, very similar point production, 12 goals, 10 assists for JJ. Maybe a little bit better on the defensive zone because he's a +6 as compared to Josh Jones -5. However, one of these teams has some adequate goaltending, and one of them is the Buffalo Sabres. And a guy that I always thought was going to find his way, but just has not, that is rotting on this Mammoth roster, is Kyler Yamamoto. He had a couple of good years up in Edmonton and was a thorn in a lot of the Flames' sides, and just, I always thought there was something to his game, but I don't know. Like, guy that's played 21 games is 3-4 for 7 total points and a +4 in a very mediocre performance with Utah. For a guy that was picked 22nd overall by a certain squad up north of the province, I always thought there was going to be more to his game, and obviously doesn't get on the score sheet today, and has kind of had the struggles after leaving Edmonton. Like, -9 with the Kraken in 23-24, and then struggled mightily with the hockey club. Obviously was injured most of the season last year, only participating in 12 games. But, like, it just feels like there are some guys here on this Utah hockey club that are a little bit of a gamble for Utah to try and figure out. But as I said, there were some injuries for Utah. Like the fact that they didn't have Logan Cooley today, that was certainly massive. I think number one that really starts to flip that face-off stat that I talked about. And obviously being without Oli Mata since late November really does change how their back end looks. So I don't know, just looking at the other side, you have to remember that some of that does apply here. Probably wouldn't see Maverick Lamoureux this early. He was kind of one of those guys that Arizona was really banking on to be that late round gem that they found back in 2022. And I think he's going to be a good NHL player eventually. Is that going to be this year at age 21 as a defender? Probably not. Yeah, that's our kind of view at the other side. The Flames certainly battened down the hatches and did continue to battle against a team that is in a similar position. Obviously, Utah starting to fall down the standings in the NHL right now. As I said, like in their last 10 games, it's not good. I think they're now down to 2-7-1, if I recall correctly, versus the Flames, who are starting to surge a little bit. So yeah, with that loss, the Mammoth go to 14-13-3, hovering around that 500 mark. They also have a little bit of a chance to bounce back. I think they have a little bit of an easier schedule heading into the Christmas break. And speaking of an easy schedule, let's talk a little bit about your Calgary Flames and their future schedule as we head into period number 4, the overtime period. Not a ton of people in chat because it's hockey in Canada. I expect they're off watching the late game, maybe seeing if Vancouver continues to struggle, as I think, who do they have in net announced for Vancouver? I didn't see who they actually handed that to. I heard it was the young kid. I just can't remember his name. And Nikita Tolopilo getting the start because what was one of the deepest goaltending pools in the league is kind of shallowed out a little bit. Yeah, Tolopilo, the 25-year-old, is going to be backed up today by Lankinen. Of course, go get ready for that game. But let's talk a little bit before we do about this next stretch of games for the Calgary Flames. I can get our sheets out here because I'll let you know that we are going to miss one game where both me and Anand are unavailable. Oh, it actually looks like Anand might be around. We'll see. It's a Saturday game. That's generally means Anand's out in High River. But we will see. So yeah, as I said, a little bit of a... I'm not going to call it a light schedule because as much as I want to say that about the Sabres, Red Wings, Kings, Sharks, and Kraken, it does kind of lead us to a struggle to close out the year. Because the Sabres, we don't know what team's going to show up on any given night. The Red Wings see the Sabres. The Kings, you know, they're a team that is beatable on some nights, but sometimes they're world beaters. And hey, they still are ahead of us in the standings. And then Macklin celebrating the Sharks. Then the Kraken come to Calgary. And then we have the Golden Knights that leads into that home and home with the Edmonton Oilers around the Christmas break. But for a game that was a little bit of a snooze fest, I think I'm going to call it there. Thank you so much to KQ and Tokyo number 1 for jumping in chat. Again, short little stream for a game that wasn't much. The Calgary Flames dominate and pick up another shutout for Dustin Wolf. We can give it another one of these. And the Calgary Flames and Blasty, they're on a 2-game win streak.